So, how is everybody? Do you have fun? Do you learn stuff here? I learned a lot already. Yeah, welcome to the panel. So it's about oracles. So today I learned that oracles, I mean, it's a Greek mythology. And I always thought that oracles on-chain are a bit a weird name because by myself, I thought oracle is something or someone that you ask to know the future. Whereas oracles on-chain usually talk about the past. But both are allowed, it seems. So that's what I learned. Let me introduce, so we have Nick from Chronicle Labs and Matt from Redstone Oracles. And usually I ask the participants of the panel to introduce themselves, but I actually want to ask to introduce each other. So like, what do you like about the other protocol? So maybe we start with Matt. What do you think does Chronicle very well?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Matt from Redstone here. So if I were to describe Chronicle, I would definitely say that this is, some of the OG guys from the maker mafia, if you can call it that way, in the sense that you would use for example, the PayPal mafia, right? So a group of very entrepreneurial-minded people that happens to be clustered around this very, very important protocol back in the day, which was, and still is, MakerDAO. A lot of very strong engineers as well on board from Poland. I'm from Poland, so we know some of these guys that work for either some of the Maker protocols or Chronicle specifically. So the engineering power is there, that's for sure. The tech is already battle tested, and they have been on production for years. They have been serving Maker as a service provider basically for years as well. So definitely the reliability aspect is there as well. And right now, what we see most is their angle when it comes to real world assets. So as you guys remember, Maker used to have, or actually still has, this kind of a dual engine model where the yield comes either from the on-chain sources, the on-chain native yield, or RWAs. And it works well because in the bear market, the RWA or outside of crypto yields get more exciting for the protocol, more profitable. So that's where Maker makes the most money in the bear market. And then when it comes to the bull market, it's obviously the yield that comes from DeFi, which is the greatest. Then you have innovations such as Ethena and other types of yield. But in general, I think the model stays intact. So now Chronicle, as we see, does have quite a lot of, I would say, focus on RWAs aspect specifically, and just tapping into that market, which is probably going to be big. So more or less, this is how I would describe Chronicle as we know it from a competitor's perspective.
Nick, what do you think about, how would you describe Redstone?
Well, so this is not how I expected today to go. I thought we were going to come up here and have some kind of battle, not be complimenting each other. But no, I think there's a lot of good things to say. I think you guys have a really, really strong team, both on the technical and on the business front. It's incredibly, right, I mean, we've been doing this for many, many, many years, but it's incredible to see how you guys went from 0 to 1, like in such a short period of time, right? You built multiple products, right? You were quite early on the Polo Oracle front, right? Right back when, right, it was really just Pyth at the time. Right, but since Pyth was very Solana focused, right, you really seized that opportunity, right, to in combination with integrating, I think, chains extremely quickly, and so you were able to carve yourself out like a significant market share in DeFi, right, really with a almost like a brute force. Force of nature type of capacity, and so it's as a competitor, right? It's sometimes frustrating, but as a business person and as a technologist, right? It's pretty inspiring to watch.
Okay, that was very nice of both of you. But let's now switch faces and be not so nice anymore. So, Matt, what do you think are the flaws of Chronicle? Where is like, what's not good about Chronicle?
Right. So, the way I would approach this question is, what kinds of, I guess, pain points we see in clients' conversations in general. And the thing is, also for you guys to understand, we over at Redstone, we do have quite a lot of focus when it comes to being present on a lot of ecosystems. And this was kind of the design philosophy as well behind the tech. So the tech is built in a very modular way, so you can switch different components, you can add new ones for redundancy or for the sake of being able to launch quickly on new chains. And this is, I believe, something that Chronicle does not have currently in terms of I'm not quite sure if this is exactly a product-specific thing or a focus-specific thing, but it seems to us like Chronicle is focusing on just a handful of chains, the strategic ones, the big ones usually. Now, this might be either a good or a bad strategy, depending on how you believe the multi-chain world is going to play out. For us, we believe that there is going to be quite a lot of chains coming. There is going to be a strong power law distribution between them, but we want to be exposed to as many of them as possible, right? So what I assume Chronicle is better for is actually serving the existing big chains, because maybe the deployment on new chains is just more complicated, or maybe it's just the tech is just not fit at this stage that it is right now to be like wildly available and day one present on the new chains that come live. So probably this would be the biggest flaw, I would say, from our perspective. So if you were to apply our strategy to Chronicle's product and focus, this would be kind of a clash here. And that is strictly because we don't really see Chronicle that much when it comes to the new and upcoming chain conversations, whether this is L2s, L1s, and things along that nature. I believe if I were to put a hypothesis on it, and Niklas, tell me if this is true or not. So how I would describe it is, we came to the market way later than Chronicle did. So we were able to actually, build the product itself, all of its components around this hypothesis of being present on as many chains as possible, of being very modular in nature. We call ourselves strongly a modular oracle. And the way it works, all of our price feeds are kept off-chain in a decentralized cloud. And in order for us to launch on a new chain, we don't have to redeploy the infrastructure. We just plug the cloud in, and everybody can just use those prices. So maybe the hypothesis here for me would be that Chronicle, this is just a tech that exists for many years now, and it was built specifically for Ethereum mainnet, with the premise of Ethereum being the main thing in the long run. And maybe that was sort of the design philosophy. Maybe not super fit for the abundance of L2s, abundance of private block space, abundance of app chains that are coming online. Now, Niklas, tell me if this is true or not.
Yeah, please defend or give or attack back. Up to you.
Sure. I think we probably have a different strategy, right, in terms of product and in terms of business strategy, right, and. I think from a technical capability, we can absolutely deploy on any chain relatively quickly, right? I think just sometimes deploying to a chain that doesn't have any activity is just kind of nonsense, because it can be kind of a waste of time, right? You integrate a chain, you deploy there, you now spend some resources to integrate, but really. What's more important is the opportunity cost, right? You could have been doing something more productive during that time, right? And so I think one strategy is to attack, right, all the newer chains, right, and be the first oracle on there, and maybe by default, if they get some traction, right, you are now the king of the sandbox. But I want to touch on this power law distribution you were talking about, right? I do think that the bigger ecosystems will become bigger, right? So the arbitrums and bases of the world, right? Liquidity begets liquidity, and if you're going to launch something new, you're going to launch where the liquidity is. Now you can, I think if we re-enter a bull market and people start doing kind of token farming incentives and someone announces we're going to do $500 million of incentives over the next 6 months, right? Then yeah, you can get a ton of liquidity right at once. But I think that's a bull market only type of strategy. That's not a general strategy that you can always follow. I mean, in terms of like criticism on the Redstone side, I think one of the strongest pieces of Chronicle is kind of our validator network. So we use a network of validators which are kind of the top crypto projects in the space, right? And it's projects like Infura, like Etherscan, Gitcoin, Gnosis, DYDX, ETH Global, Nethermind, Mantle, right? And so the idea is that if you get kind of all of these highly reputable projects, right, to basically attest to data, then the kind of likelihood of a kind of consensus dispute, becomes, almost like non-existent, right? Or becomes highly improbable because there would be like crypto cannibalism. It would be like the industry turning in on itself. And so I think that comes with costs, right? And one of the costs is that when we want to do like an update, right? We need to get all the validators to upgrade, right? And so you need to be like, hey, you upgrade, hey, you upgrade, hey, you upgrade, right? And they're like, okay, we'll get it in the next sprint, right? And so I think that kind of cuts down on our agility a bit, but I think it gives us much stronger guarantees from a data integrity point of view. Versus with you guys, right, what we've noticed is I think you guys were just running your own validators for the longest time, which seems strange because what is the point of validators if you're just running all of them, right? Like you can always agree with yourself that the data can be anything you want. So I never really categorized you guys as particularly trustless or decentralized in that kind of way. But I do see the benefit of like going with that at the beginning to like scale incredibly quickly and then substituting out that kind of validator network with something else, right, in the future. And I believe that's kind of what you guys are trying to do with this AVS on EigenLayer.
Yeah, so a couple of things when it comes to decentralization, I believe. So the approach that we've had was very, very product-facing, and it still is, which means the thing that we had to optimize for, as you said, basically was the speed of updates, the speed of iteration to be able to be quick to market as quick as possible. But then the decentralization aspect is definitely interesting, is definitely important on, I believe, 3 main verticals. One is data accuracy. So if there exists a true market price, how do we get the closest to the true market price? Then censorship resistance, right? So if the regulator can kill the company, if it's like possible or if it's not possible. And then I would say liveness is the third component that's very, very important. And I believe that if you have this kind of a product approach, when it comes to data accuracy and liveness, especially at the early stages of building a product, it's just way easier to maximize for these 2 parameters while being, rather concentrated. So either running your own validators, all of them, or just having like a, very closed circle of 2-3 partners that you do it with, just because you get to tweak the tech way quicker. And there is a hole that you have to solve, and the update just gets, out there, and it's super, super, super quick. But when it comes to, the regulator potentially able to kill the company, that's where I believe we need the true decentralization, and that is something that we are, in the process of doing right now. We have a couple of validators run by other companies, the big ones, not front-running our marketing here, but we definitely see the need for it. But I believe that, this is kind of the trade-off that you can make, just because the probability of the regulator coming in and killing your company is fairly small, and the outcome would be basically the same as if you were to misprice or as if you were to go offline as an oracle, right? Which can be most of the time solved by being fairly concentrated, right? So the expected value in my mind when it comes to not being properly decentralized in terms of the validator network is, is way more negative when it comes to the higher probability events like mispricing or going offline than it is when it comes to being cut off by a regulator, because the probability of that happening is fairly small. So that was kind of the thinking, at least in my mind, when I sort of recall it in terms of, okay, there is certain avenues where we have to make some trade-offs at the beginning to get the product out on the market, and then we can progressively make sure that it's kosher on all the possible verticals. This is also kind of, I believe, how Anatoly from Solana builds, products. He basically says, this is kind of a different example, but just to give you some trade-off benchmark here, he basically says, what we optimize for is security. It's not, the liveness of the blockchain, right? So we make sure that the money is secure. The chain can go down. And we just say it outright that the chain can go down. And if that happens, it's because we build the product in a way which, in which it sometimes breaks. It sometimes breaks. We iterate on those mistakes and make sure this doesn't happen the same way, right? So this is kind of the trade-off that we also had in mind, but on different verticals when it comes to building the product.
Okay, would it be fair to summarize that Chronicle is this OG project, kind of the king of the hill for a longer time? Also more conservative in how they approach things, because also numbers speak for itself. Like Chronicle, I checked, secures 8 billion across 5 protocols, I think. 10? Oh, sorry, maybe I should have used the graph and not some other data provider. And but Redstone secures 1.7 billion across 50 protocols or something like that?
Yeah, that depends on how you count it as well, because DeFi Llama specifically excludes bridges from it. So with bridges, by bridges I mean things like, for example, Puffer. So they use us for internal logic, which is not like a bridge. It's an LST protocol, but they use us to secure the TVL that is there, which is a couple of billion. Solve, Lombard, and a couple others. It's closer to like 5, 6. But yeah, that's definitely smaller than Chronicle, because obviously Chronicle has some of the biggest protocols like lending markets using them, which is easily portrayed by DeFi Llama specifically with the methodology that they've got.
Okay. So that's interesting. So we have these two players, they do different trade-offs, and I think that makes actually a market, right? Like whatever as an Oracle consumer you prefer or are your needs, then you would choose one of those. Then I want to give a quick opportunity for each of you to kind of highlight recent developments. I think, Nick, you talked quickly about the verified assets before, but I didn't really understand, so maybe you can explain me and the audience again.
Sure. So I think over the past 12 to 24 months, we've seen kind of an explosion of adoption of tokenized assets, or as some people call them, RWAs. It's a terrible name. Stop calling them RWAs. Finance people look at us like we're really weird. They're tokenized assets. Okay, but that's really going to help DeFi kind of scale. Right, because right now DeFi is kind of limited by what is the value of all of the crypto collateral in existence, and if BTC and ETH and Solana are not pumping, then DeFi doesn't really grow, right? But there's tens of trillions of traditional assets out there, right? And so it's really this onboarding of traditional financial assets into crypto that's going to be kind of the catalyst for DeFi kind of taking the next level up. And so what we launched in August was this tokenization oracle that we call verified asset. We launched it in partnership with M0, which is a stablecoin protocol backed by treasury bills. And since then, we've, in the last couple of months, we've onboarded Midas, we've onboarded Centrifuge, we've onboarded Superstate, and a couple of the other largest asset issuers in the space that we haven't announced yet. And so it's I think it's a really exciting new new products vertical, and I think strategically we're really well positioned to execute on that.
On our side, I would say still most of the things that we do are purely on-chain, specifically when it comes to yield-bearing collateral for lending markets. So we used to be super deep in ETH LSTs when that was the main, the name of the game when it comes to the collateral that people would like to see at lending markets. Then it was LRTs, then different types of stables as well, or tokenized hedge funds like Ethena, for example, but still staying within the on-chain context. Now, Bitcoin, I would say, is the name of the game when it comes to bringing it to DeFi and raising the liquidity bar and just bringing some net new users over from the Bitcoin ecosystem, which usually are very, very wealthy, right? Especially the miner circles. So I believe we are doubling down on that as well with the AVS part that we are building. So also using restaking for a couple of things internally, for example, making the token productive, or further decentralizing certain pieces of our backend, and then being very much plugged in within the LRT/Bitcoin LST space of actually actively participating as an AVS as well in those ecosystems. So I would say this is the main focus coming into 2025. Now, with the new regulatory changes that I believe, all can expect in 2025, there's definitely going to be more and more focus being put in the I guess tokenized assets aspect, just because I think it's a very fair point that this just raises the bar for what can be done. If you want to build a stablecoin product that's entirely based on chain collateral, you can only get so far, and at some point you need to have something from the outside because the liquidity here is just not enough for it to grow. Right? So the same situation applies to DeFi. If you want really, really deep liquid markets that are not going to be so volatile as they are right now, you just need the injection of capital from the outside, which is in the form of tokenized assets. So there's definitely going to be more and more convos like this. But yeah, let's see what happens after, I believe, the 20th of January, right? When the guy needs to be, I guess, officially comes into the power, and oh yeah, and then we will see. But definitely looking into that market as well, we understand that this is probably going to be the next steps for how DeFi grows.
Do we have time for audience questions? So, any questions from the audience? No? I mean, I have more questions. But I think we're at the end of the panel. Thank you so much for coming, and I hope you learned something. I learned that we don't talk about real-world assets anymore. It's called tokenized assets. Thank you so much.